Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Hello, it's a Global TV Talk Show, and I'm Ed in San Diego, and with us in Dallas area is Chase Eskelsen with Verano Learning Partners, and welcome again, Chase.
Thanks for having me. Always a joy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. It's been about a year or more. I forget how many shows we've done, but we'll do a count and let you know. So,
love to see.
We'll certainly welcome you to continue. Okay, so let's talk about your specialty, and you can say it a lot better than me, but let me ask you, did you happen to build those model airplanes behind you?
Actually, no. Normally, you've seen my background in my office many a time, and today, the first time since all of the crazy world fell apart, the first time I get to go to a conference. So I'm actually remote today and headed to an in-person conference for the first time. Can you believe it?
I hope you're vaccinated.
So these I did not build, but they are pretty cool. A couple of airplanes and a couple of rockets behind me. So.
Wow, I'm spaced out here. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Verano Learning Partners is a venture capital firm, but focused on education. And why don't you do a minute or two on what I'm talking about?
Sure. Yeah, Verano Learning Partners, we have been around for a long time. We are getting ready to start our 21st year doing this weird education thing. And we started way back when with a full-time online school that we launched in the state of Arizona. And we were able to grow that school over 17 years and do some really amazing things with it. About 4 years ago now, our board came back to us and said, hey, we want you to do something a little bit different. You've done the full-time online thing, and that was really innovative when you started. But now we want to switch gears and say, what does the next 20 years look like? What is going to be innovative moving forward? And so we decided that we would release the control of that school and start another type of school that is taking the very best of that digital experience and the very best of the in-person experience and cram those two things together to make hybrid schools. And so that's what we've done. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've launched 2 hybrid schools and then acquired 1 international school that has hybrid components all over the world.
Well, today is April 29. And the year is 2021, and you're at a live conference? Wow.
Can you believe it?
Wow, I'm not jealous. I don't want to go to one, but having done 300 or so myself, but actually, this guy whose family owns a vineyard in the mountains of Arizona, I forget the exact name, he and I had a virtual cocktail hour, and we came up with a brainstorm for on or about August 1 this year to hold a conference up in the mountains in the vineyard.
Oh,
as a
that would be
setting,
awesome.
with the proviso that everyone has to have the vaccine and prove it.
Yeah, it
Even
sounds
though
like
we outside in the fresh air, we certainly will be holding a cup, but and talking serious stuff.
yeah, that sounds like a great time.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Uh, let's talk about the digital divide out there. Never mind, it's not political, just business. But this is education now. So the digital divide and what you guys are into is all digital. So how are you dealing with that?
It's an interesting thing. If you look at what happened during COVID, the things that are coming to light as big problems are big problems. And I'm not saying that they're not, but what I am going to say is they're not new problems. What COVID did is it took this little corner that was a problem and shined a spotlight on it. And now the whole world sees, oh, there's a huge problem here. About 26-ish years ago, I think it was 1995, the US Department of Commerce published the first report around the digital divide in America. And what is the digital divide? Simply put, it's people who have high-speed internet and a computer that can handle that type of internet speed. That's a very high level. There's a whole lot more to it than that. But they reported the first time back in 95. And it's been a problem since that first report came out. What COVID did is shined a light and said, hey, now that everybody has to be online, thinking of schools, work, like there's so many pieces that go into this puzzle. Now that everyone has to be online, this digital divide grew from a little crevice to the Grand Canyon because there are people who don't have access to these things. And some of the workarounds, if you will, Ed, were going to the library. Uh-oh, the library shut down. Going to, some of these entities that have computers available for public use. Can't use those anymore. So it caused us to see there's a huge problem here. One thing that was interesting, there was a report done in 2020 that talked about 1/4 of households, 1 out of 4, with children ages 5 to 17, either didn't have high-speed Wi-Fi or a computer or both. 1 in 4. So there's a huge digital divide, and that's just in the US. When you take into account the rest of the world, like that divide widens even that much more. Pretty interesting.
So the goal would be to reduce or eliminate, I can't eliminate it, but reduce stratification.
Well, yeah, you look at some of these big tech companies. I remember hearing about, I think it was Google, and they had these big dirigibles that they would go up in the air on a balloon, and it would provide Wi-Fi down to that region. And I think I just read an article the other day that some of those are coming down now, and it didn't quite work out the way they thought it would. But there's a huge opportunity there, and if somebody can figure it out, I think that there's a great business in it. But additionally, it's going to help people stay connected. And as we continue with technology advances and moving forward, everything is done online. Even before COVID, like banking can be done online, and everything that you have, it somehow is involved with a digital aspect. And so it is increasingly going to be more difficult to stay plugged in, as a little pun, with what's going on in the world around us. And education is no different there.
So the key is security, cybersecurity. I'm just imagining a drone outside my window there giving off Wi-Fi, 5G. What about the guy across the street? Is he watching what I'm doing too?
Well, the answer to that is probably yes.
Yeah, what are we going to do? All right,
Yeah.
So let's talk about paying for this thing. Student loan debt. I mean, how do parents who've either been laid off or furloughed or living on stimulus checks, how are they going to afford the Verano learning partners?
Well, one of the benefits of the majority of the schools that we either launch or that we partner with is that they're their public schools, which is great. And I think here's a great misconception that is really misunderstood outside of education circles and even sometimes in. We have two that I'm thinking of specifically, schools that are charter schools. And people always say, oh, it's a charter school, it must be private. No, it's not. It's a public charter school. The government still funds the school and funds the activities for those students to complete inside the school. On the inverse of that, we have the bridge school, which is a private pay model where families sign up for it. And the benefit that we see with our model is because it has that full-time online component, and because we have people from all over the world, specifically thinking of our expat families who maybe have lost jobs or been repatriated and they have a whole lot of things going on, our school provides the flexibility that they need, but it also is at a reasonable price point for those families to get a great education for their students.
Wow. How can people find you directly? What address do you want to give out right now?
Yeah, verano.org, verano.org is our nonprofit. We're an education nonprofit. That's our website, and you can find about partnerships that we have. We partner with schools, but we also partner with other entities. And before we started, you and I were talking about the iCode partnership that we have. And we try to find ways that we can partner with people to provide educational experiences. And that can be for a whole host of different people groups, if you will. We have an iCode facility that's right next door to our Valor, Arizona campus. On top of that, we've partnered with the SEAL Future Foundation in an effort to support Navy SEALs returning from their SEAL team missions and getting reintegrated into civilian life. And so we have a lot of learning opportunities and we have a lot of partnerships that we look at. We would love to talk with anyone who has a question or wants to potentially partner with us moving forward as well.
Well, I know some people involved with SEALs right across over here in Coronado. And I'll get this show to a guy named Paul. Not producer Paul, but another
Not producer Paul.
Paul.
That sounds great. We've got a pretty good group of guys that are in that area, obviously, a big SEAL community. And I would be happy to help get anyone in touch with the SEAL team, the SEAL Future Foundation team that I can. It's a great mission. We're really proud to partner with them, and they are just doing some incredible work supporting, these guys and ladies that have given their entire life for our country. So it's awesome. I'm happy to help any way I can.
So let's talk at another time, perhaps next week or whenever is convenient for you guys, about the SEAL Foundation and what your tie-in is. But right now, let's talk about parental advocacy and support for teachers. These two items are interchanged, aren't they?
They are oftentimes. I think that if you look at it, that's kind of the hub, and there's all these spokes that kind of go out from it. And if we want to even get more hyper specific, what are all those things around? I would say it's that education for students, right? Like we've all got the same mission. We want our students, whether it's our own children or the children that are tied into our classrooms, to learn. And as we've gone through this last year, learning loss is another one of those areas that it was always there, but COVID shone this bright light and said, hey guys, this is a problem. The alarms are going off. And we've seen that learning loss. So we've talked about it on this show before. We call it the COVID slide, right? You've got the summer slide, and now we've got the COVID slide that is not just the first spring of 2020, but now it's spring 2020 through spring 2021. And, I think we'll talk about it here in a minute, but students are not getting an equitable foundation during this time. Students in Texas are not being treated the same as students in New York. And the students in Florida are not the same as those in Oregon. And so it's not just that there's learning loss, but it's that it's different all over the place. There's no silver bullet that solves all of these problems for students all over the place. And so the parent advocacy and the teacher support's all wrapped up into teaching students, becomes so much more important, getting our families and our schools on board to not only continue educating students, but man, we've got to fix this learning loss problem.
So what about how college acceptance, admittance managers are going to view this period of time?
That's a great question. We have seen just some of the most amazing things happening with access to colleges this year. Last year, they canceled the ACT SAT test. I mean, that was like the thing. You got to have a great score in order to get into these colleges. You know, these kids would lose sleep and practice and study and do all these things for months leading up to the ACT or SAT test. Then they went away last year. So then you would say, okay, well, what else are they looking at? Well, they're looking at your transcripts. They're looking at your grades, that things like, you know, your survey, entrance survey, and your paragraphs about why you want to come become increasingly more important. Here's something else that I didn't learn until just recently. Colleges, when you get accepted, you get one of two options. You can get accepted and come in the fall, or you can defer your acceptance for 1 year and enroll next fall. And there was a ton of kids last year who deferred their first year of college for a year. And that's now backing up the system to where the acceptance rates this year are at an all-time low, because all these kids have deferred for a year and now they're taking those spots that other kids would have taken. And it's causing this huge bottleneck in the system where, yes, the ACT and SAT tests are back in some areas, but it doesn't matter because the colleges aren't accepting as many. The other good thing is, you know, that we're seeing the Yales and the Harvards and all this, they're accepting students who may not have been accepted last year when there was a ton of open seats available. They're accepting students who maybe wouldn't have been able to get into those schools previously. And it's going to cause generational change for their families, which is a great thing to see.
That's fascinating. I didn't know about that.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
All right, so what are we going to talk about now? Educational equity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great springboard into this. You know, we mentioned it before, but there's so many different ways that you can look at educational equity. If you're in the inner city, they're going to talk about educational equity between the different races of students. And that's definitely an area that should be looked at. If you look at the rural communities, they're looking at it more from a household income perspective. That's an interesting fact. You know, Ed, we probably should do an entire show on rural education, because when you compare the rural students and their demographics and the inner city students and their demographics, when you remove the ethnicity piece, they're very similar. Household income, level of high school graduation attendance, like they're very similar, and they are both in these areas that they're not getting equitable service. I've got a couple folks who I think would be perfect to talk about this with us. I'll see if I can get them lined up in the next couple of weeks. But specifically thinking of what we saw with the digital divide, we've got this entire portion of the country out in rural America that doesn't have access to high-speed internet. And nobody's talking about them. Everyone talks about the inner city struggles, and they should. That's a definite area that we should be talking about. But we can't leave out rural America and the digital divide that we're there as well. You know, there was a McKinsey and Company report that cited that students of color could be 6 to 12 months behind compared to 4 to 8 months of their counterpart students in the cities, in the urban, suburban areas. While all students are suffering, those who came into the pandemic with the least access to academic opportunity, they're suffering the greatest learning loss. And study after study that's come across my desk is backing this up, that because people didn't have some of the foundations in place, the digital foundations in place, which we've talked about a lot on this, but they also didn't have the ability to pivot quite as quickly. I mean, there are still schools in America that are just now in April 29th of 2001 that are just now this month coming back in person to school. And so many of them, what we're seeing are these schools where some of these students haven't heard from a teacher or haven't been able to be found by teachers since last March. They've done no education. Talk about educational equity issues. These kids have literally lost an entire year of education. Think about the holes that that's going to have in their understanding and comprehension moving forward.
So this is off the wall stuff here right now from where I'm coming from, but so does that mean kids will have lost the idea of what the capital of their state, or what's the biggest river nearby, or, you know, what's the neighboring states around Kansas, for instance?
Yeah.
They just tune out and watch TV?
Yeah, in some instances, I mean, they're literally not going to know some of those things that we would consider foundational, right? I'm sure I know I learned the song about the state capitals. I learned about which rivers are most important in those areas, but let's take it even a step further. Let's say that there's a student who this last year was supposed to learn division, and they missed the foundational concepts of division, and now next year they're going to go to long division. Maybe they're going to go into some algebraic areas, and they're not going to understand the basics of division. They're going to be lost. I mean, This is not something that you can just like recover from a day later. You've got to go back and get those pieces and scaffold them appropriately to ensure that, you know, they understand the basics of it before you move on to the more foundational areas.
So by basics, we take like the number 100, all right? And what is division? It means, well, if you divide it by 2, it's 50 and 50. If you divide it by 4, it's 25, 25, 25, 25. But when you get into the fractions, like 1/3, you know, I mean, I had a problem with that. No, but
yeah.
But
well, let's use your example, Ed. If you've got 100 divided by 2, we know that's 50. If a student misses that portion of the concept, think about next year when it's 2x equals 100. Well, the answer is still the same, and you and I can do that because we've understood the basics. But it's so much more difficult when you start adding in letters instead of only numbers.
Right. 2x plus y and equals what?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So is there a video on that on YouTube?
There's always a video on YouTube. Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's got to be some way this can be captured. Maybe Dr. Jill Biden can teach that.
Yeah. There are some. Hey, there you go. Producer Paul's got it figured out for us. And a pizza. Oh man, you're making me hungry.
Yeah. Right.
Looking at some interesting things like Khan Academy online, they have all their content available for students to go back and watch. The question is, if a student and or parent knows that they've missed on those learning opportunities, how do they know where to go searching to get those foundational pieces? Like, if I wasn't in education and I knew that my kid missed third grade, I wouldn't know how to search for what they missed in third grade and make sure that they get that. Like, got to partner with someone who knows about that. And so I think on your show, we've had people like the Point or at-home tutoring team. I would highly recommend searching these people out because they know what the standards are. That I'm in Texas. What are the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills? What are the things that Texas says these are important skills that a third grader knows? And they'll be able to guide you into that.
So a couple of things. Point, is that TUDA or TUTA?
TUTA, Tuta Point, all one word.
Got it. Okay. All right. So just imagine someone who doesn't have a college education, and it's not necessary to be a pizza maker, right? You can own a pizza shop and make gabs of money, and put your kid through Harvard. But if they don't have a basic understanding of a customer request of having 1/3 of the pizza slices be margarita and 1/3 pepperoni and veggies on the rest, how many slices are in this thing? I'll take out the computer and say 8 minus divided by 3 is what, and then they start spreading the margarita sauce around, right?
Yep.
That's practical, right?
It's practical. It is. And a lot of those practical skills will be lost this year, unfortunately. Now, one benefit, I know we talk a lot about negatives because there was a lot of negatives assigned with COVID. One benefit, the CARES Act and some of the other things that have come through recently from funding, I will say that I have never in my life seen as much funding going to education. And I'm not saying the education budget from the federal government was doubled. No, it wasn't 4x. It wasn't even 10x. We're looking at more money being funneled into supporting students than we've ever seen before. So now the question becomes, what are we going to do with that money? And are we going to use it appropriately for student success? And that is the question of the hour, because there are a lot of people who want to get their fingers on that, but they don't necessarily want to support students. So we've got to make sure that we hold our state level officials accountable for what they're doing with that money. And it's I know this is the similar case in countries all over the world, that their governments are providing funding to ensure the students are progressing forward. So great problem to have. Now let's just make sure that it's used for students.
This has been an interesting conversation on digital divide, learning loss, student loan debt, educational equity, which we'll get back to in a second, remote learning, which is what this is, right?
Yeah.
And support for teachers, parent advocacy also. What's educational equity?
Just making sure that everyone gets access to the appropriate level of rigor that they need to be successful. Now, I know that's a really high level, simplistic answer, and I'm sure that somebody that's more eloquent than I could give a much broader, more beautifully eloquent answer. But the answer is basically, how do we make sure that all kids get the same access? They get the same ability to be successful into the future. It's an interesting question. It's a question that people have struggled with for decades in our country. Personally, I'm in the digital education world. I think that there's some tools that we have. I don't think that it's a silver bullet, but I think that using some of these tools provide a greater equity than can be seen in other situations. There is a lot of data that comes out of digital tools. So if a teacher, let's think about it from two perspectives. If a teacher has 30 kids in her classroom and she hands out 30 pieces of paper that is the English test, and she gets 30 pieces of paper back, and what does she do? Gets her red pen ready and she marks all these pages down, right? And she provides the feedback to the students. Now compare that with a digital tool where there are 30 students and one teacher, and the 30 students are behind a computer and they type in their answers to the same test. The test is no different other than it's a piece of paper versus a computer. That teacher then gets to grade the 30 responses, as well as the computer, we can build in the algorithms to look at trends. And the teacher can say, oh my, every student in my class missed question 7. Okay, what was question 7 about? Now, ding, that teacher knows exactly what she needs to do before she releases kids to go home for the day. I've got to reteach the concept that was question 7. That's one aspect that I think digital helps. It creates it easier. Can that same teacher lay all 30 sheets out on the floor and say, that's a lot of red right about the middle of the page. Let me look at that. Sure. But it's so much easier when the computer triggers it for you. Now, think about it this way. And I'm sorry, this is a long-winded answer, but think about this. If the teacher does the same test on a computer, every student missed question 7, half the class missed question 3, and 10 students missed question 9. Well, she knows question 7, everyone needs. Now I'm going to do a breakout and differentiate my instruction for the half that missed question 3. And I'm going to make sure that they now understand that while the other class is working on something that's a higher level of rigor. And then we're going to put the whole class back together. I'm going to pull out the third of the students that missed question, whatever I said, 9 or 10, whatever. And we're able to use this data to instruct students to make sure they master the content, not just are exposed to it, but they actually master it. They understand and comprehend. And then we can move forward the next day and we get to do this all over again. So using that data to effectively help students.
Well, that's an excellent analysis.
The same data set that the teacher uses for her students, the administrator gets the same data set, but instead of one teacher, as an administrator, I get all of my 3rd grade teachers' data around that. And I can say, ooh, every single teacher had their entire student body miss question 7. It wasn't just dedicated to one class. Oh, we've got a problem with our curriculum. We need to make some adjustments. Or of my 6 3rd grade classes, 5 of them did great, and this one teacher is consistently bad. I know I've got a teacher problem. I'm going to create some professional development to pull them forward. So data becomes incredibly useful, more so than just the classroom, but at a school level.
So, Chase Eskelson, this has been enlightening and a lot of fun. And that's, for me, the way to learn. So, good luck going forward.
Oh, just so happy to be here. And we have a lot of fun joining you. Julie sends her regards. She wishes she could make it.
Yeah, she's driving down the coast, right?
Yeah, she's enjoying her time. I can promise you that.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you for being on Global TV. And Chase, give us your website again, verano.org. Is that it?
Verano.org, verano.org.
Okay, tune it in, people, and we'll see you next time on Global TV.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.